Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It's time for our Saturday briefing. Here we are in the middle of December 2020. This is the briefing for the 12th. And I hope you had a great weekend last weekend. Talked to several of you, and sounds like we're off to a good start for December and ending well. So I praise God for that. And so anyway, today, the briefing is going to take a little different turn. And when I tell you the title, what I want to talk to you about for a few moments today, in today's briefing, you're going to run for the hills, I'm afraid. This is going to be a boring sounding title and maybe even a subject. But if you'll listen to me and do what I encourage you to do, I promise you it's going to pay great dividends for 2021 and for the rest of your life if you'll get in this habit. So, all right, let's jump into it. And I'll try not to keep you so long as I did last week. But what I want to talk to you about today is I want to talk to you about doing a year-end audit. Okay, you're screaming, running for the door, running for the hills. But in particular, I want you to focus. I may talk about a ministry audit next week, but I want you to do a personal time audit before the end of the year. All right. I started this. Actually, I got this from John Maxwell back in the day when I first was introduced to John Maxwell, and I got his tapes. I got a monthly tape from him. I went to conferences, and he had a big impact in my life. And one of the things he recommended to do, and he did this, is that the last 2 weeks of the year, he would take time to reflect and look at his life and where he had been, what he'd been doing, and look at the future. And so I started doing that, and it has paid tremendous dividends. And if you're not already doing this, I think we all do it a little bit anyway, but I want you to be very intentional. And so I'm going to give you a few tools. And so before the end of the year, I want you to do an audit of your life, a time audit, okay? And so let's jump into it. A good audit, and I used to get one every year. We'd have an audit there at our church, and I'd get a report, and I'd give an update to our council and all this stuff. We had it available for any financial contributor if there was ever any questions and all this stuff. And so trust me, I lived with this whole concept of an audit, and we get audited here at the regional office every year. The general headquarters audits us by an outside accountant. And so it's really a part of good business practice. It's a part of what good leaders do. And so a good audit is very expensive. So what I'm asking you to do is going to require hard work and some time on your part. And a good audit achieves at least 4 things. First of all, it helps a person or an organization. It helps them to determine if they're actually doing what they say they're doing. Now, we can put this we can put it easily into terms, say a Fortune 500 company, and they tell their stockholders, we earned 50 cents a share last year. Well, an audit, they'll have an audits report, an independent audit that will come in there and go through their books and say, yep, they're actually doing what they say they're doing. The evidence is there. And so a good audit helps you to determine if you're really doing what you say you're doing. You say you pray, you say you study, you say you take time for your family, you say you take a day off. Well, let's do an audit. Let's see. Let's see if the proof's in the pudding. Let's eat the pudding and see if it's really if the ingredients are in there. A good audit, number 2, it determines where there is bleeding in that organization or in that person's life. And what I mean by that is if there's irregularities, if you're losing money, if there's this account that is questionable, if something mysterious is going on and you don't know, you've noticed that there's money going to the Cayman Islands in some kind of secret account or something, there's an irregularity there. A good audit will find that bleeding that's costing you. Well, that's what I want you to do by doing your time audit. And then a good audit it identifies substandard practices. It's not good business practice. I remember one that our financial reports that were being given to the council and to me, our financial reports were used on one software system, but they were taken off of another software system. And I won't get into all the details of it, but nothing bad going on, but that's substandard practice. And what our auditor said, that they were taking it off the websites of the financial institutions and all this stuff, and we're putting them in. It was in Excel. You're transferring them into Excel. Well, there could be somebody could take the numbers and put any number they wanted in there. So you don't have any evidence that those are the true numbers in that Excel. Or while they're changing the data, they could just make an honest mistake. And so it's not good business practice, and so they identified that, which led to the fourth thing. It will provide recommendations for achieving best practices. And that's probably the most important part of the audit I'd get every year. They would give these bullet points. We recommend that you do this. We recommend that you address this. Like the little issue with taking the data off one type of software and putting it on an Excel spreadsheet. Basically, it was because our in-house financial secretary felt much more comfortable dealing with Excel. And so she was as honest as the day is long. But so their recommendation said, Pastor, we feel like it would be okay, continue to do that. Why doesn't she give you the bank statements every month, and you physically look at the bank statements and initial them that you have signed it, that you have validated that what's on that Excel spreadsheet is on the financial institution statement, and that they match. Then you're covered. So they recommended an easy solution for us. And so a good audit, it helps you to determine if you're really doing what you say you're doing. It helps you determine if there's any irregularities, if you're cheating on yourself. This is a personal time audit. If you are cheating yourself or cheating your family or cheating your church, and then it helps identify sub-practices. You're not spending your time wisely. And then it will help guide you to recommended ways for achieving best practices. So that's what a good audit does, those four things. So here is my mission, is I want to encourage you to do a personal time audit. And I would encourage it to look like this. First of all, I want you to audit your personal calendar and schedule your personal time for 2021. Do it this year. Don't go into January. Don't make this a moving target. I'm going to take a day off and I'll figure it out each week. Or we're going to have a vacation next year. We live here in the Dakotas and Montana, guys and gals. We live in some of the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And I talk to people, ministers and laymen, I talk to them all the time that haven't seen some of the major sights, some of the major beauties. We get in a rhythm or we get in a rut and we just go to the same thing, or we're going to get to it someday. If I could just I'll get around to it. And we never do. You know why? Because we always mean to, but we don't sit down and do an audit and plan out our calendar, do an audit of our time. So I want you to audit your personal calendar schedule first. Before the end of the year, know what your vacations are, your day off is. This is my non-negotiable day off. Yes, there will be occasionally an ox will get in the ditch and you'll have to move. You don't cancel it, you move it. But you go ahead and plan your time off, your family time. Plan those days you're going to be at home at night. You're going to work all day, but there's going to be so many days a week that I am going to be at home with my family. All that stuff. Remember, everyone is fighting for your time, but no one or very few are fighting for you. You got to do that yourself. Let me give you an example. Just yesterday, Sanjay and I, late last month, we had to be in Rapid City, and so we love Rapid City. It's a beautiful place there, and so we went down a couple of days early on our dime And we went down and we spent all day up till early afternoon, and we just stayed in the motel room and we worked through our personal calendars. We worked through the regional calendar. We talked about our future. We talked about our finances. We did a marriage audit, and we just sit down, any irregularities, any concerns, any in our marriage, any practices that are not best practices that we need to tweak or we need to eliminate or that we need to start. And so it was a great 2 days. And so one of the things that we did, as I said, we did a time audit and we went ahead and planned our schedule and our vacations and all this kind of stuff. Well, yesterday I'm working on the regional calendar for next year. All right, I may talk about that next week, do a ministry audit. But so I was working on the regional calendar, and I bumped into something. I bumped into my vacation time versus CAMS. And it was very crucial. Next year, for a few months, my son, who we will not have seen for over 2 years, and my grandchildren, who we will not have seen for over 2 years because of all this COVID craziness, they're going to be, of all things, they're going to be in Columbia, South Carolina. Hopefully, it can always change at the last minute, but it appears that they're going to be at Fort Jackson, and it's only for 6 months. And so we had to be very specific to guard some time when we go and spend some extended time with our son and our grandchildren. So the way we've done CAMS this year, it completely comes up against the time that we'd set aside for our personal time. So you know what I did? I changed CAMS. Not because CAMS is not important. CAMS is very important. It's one of the tools that we raise up young leaders and help people get credentials. But because I had already done my homework and had done an audit, and I had protected some time, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the job. I'm not going to compromise what God's called me to do, but I'm also not going to compromise my first congregation, and that's my family. And so because I had identified this time, I'd done this time audit, I'm able early in the year because I'm making decisions for next August and September all the way into 2022. I was able to make those decisions because and without compromising ministry, but also without compromising family. That's the importance of a time audit. Just a few hours ago, yesterday, it paid off. So I want to encourage you, the first thing you do, don't finish this year. Do not finish this year without first having planned your next year, and plan first your personal time. Then second, audit your typical work week and develop a daily game plan that helps you achieve what you're trying to achieve without sacrificing your health or your family. Ministry, again, people are fighting for your time all the time. If the truth be known, they want 24/7 access to you. And so the answer is almost always no. You have to build boundaries. You have to put margin into your life. I want you to work hard. A 40-hour work week is may be okay for an hourly wage kind of worker, but you're in upper management as a pastor or on a ministerial team, and so you're on salary, and so it will be more than 40 hours. I'm not telling you not to work hard, but you must audit your work week and know when you're going to start and know when you're going to quit, and you audit that, have a daily game plan. I remember years ago, and I may have already said this, you may have heard me say this, I don't know, but one of those things that had a huge impact. I was driving my son to school. This was back when he was in middle school, many years ago. We were listening to the radio on the way over, and the disc jockey, he said, if you don't have a plan for your life, trust me, someone else does, and it will be to their advantage, not yours. That hit me like a ton of bricks, because I realized I didn't really have a plan for my life. I got up every day, and whatever was there to do, I'd open the mail. If there's something in the mail that I had to do, I'd take care of it. When I got a telephone call, I'd answer it, and that person, whatever their need was, that set my agenda. Sunday was coming, so I'd work on some sermons, but I let outside influences run my life. That's no way to lead, and it's not sustainable, because outside influences will eventually have you working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, and it will cost you your health. It'll cost you your relationship with God. It'll cost you your family. And so do a time audit. And I've given a few things here. Your work week must include the following. Okay, I know might or should or could, but I would strongly encourage you to include at least these 5 things, specifically 4 things. And this is in order. This is in order of priorities. You don't have to agree with me on this, and so you can change it, but this is how I do it. But number 1, time for personal growth. Okay, a growing pastor grows churches. You've got to grow. The key to growing your influence in your ministry is growing yourself. If your study time is always about sermons, that's about growing others. What about growing you? And so personal time for prayer, for reading, general reading, broad reading, listening to podcasts, downloading seminars, or even going to seminars. But your daily game plan must have time for personal growth. I remember years ago, and then the second thing, time for sermon preparation. I remember years ago, W.A. Criswell, he's gone on to be with the Lord now, but he was the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Dallas. A great expository preacher, and I just really admired him, and he was a great leader and a great teacher to pastors. And I was listening to him one day on a cassette. This is back when you had Walkmans with cassettes, all right? And I'm walking down the road, and he's talking to pastors, and he was telling about what he did. He said, and he challenged us: give your mornings to God, and give your mornings to sermon preparation. And he talked about how his first 2 hours were just general reading and prayer, growing himself. And then he spent the next 3 hours, 5 hours in the morning. This is what he did, 3 hours in sermon preparation. Do that every day. And then he would go and and then he would exercise, take a shower, and then have a working lunch. And he went on and on. But that hit me like a ton of bricks. And that day, I remember I was outside walking. I began to weep. I said, God, I'm going to give my mornings to you from this day forward. And almost without exception, and of course there are days that there's bigger issues that overwhelm your typical daily work plan. But year after year after year after year, I've given my mornings to God. And I start with my personal devotions and reading and reflection time. And not so much now as it used to be when I was a pastor, but how we give those hours to sermon preparation. And it paid off. And so your work week must include the following: time for personal growth, time for sermon preparation, and then catch this, time for investing in relationships. If you don't make time both within and outside of the church, if you're not intentional about making time to invest in relationships, you know who will gobble up your time? The high maintenance people, the people that everything is an issue, everything is an emergency. And it's those precious, God love them, those precious people that after every Sunday, they're waiting on you as soon as you step off the pulpit. It's that same handful of people while visitors are walking out the door, while legitimate, hardworking volunteers that get hardly any of your time are walking out the door, and these few people are monopolizing your time. God love them, but you've got to make time in your work week where you are intentionally investing in relationships. Number 4, your work week, it don't have to be a lot of time, but your work week must include what I call leadership. Okay, followers experience the present. Managers manage the present, and leaders create the future. Leaders are out ahead. They're planning, they're thinking, they're being creative. If we keep doing this, this is the trajectory. And so I need to prepare us. We need to do this and this and this. And so you can't spend a lot of time. The best leadership books will tell you that. You don't get to spend a lot of time because of the next one I'm going to tell you. You don't get to spend a lot of time if for personal growth and sermon preparation and pouring into relationships, but there's got to be a few hours a week that you put your phone aside, you shut the door, and you're planning. And then number 5, your work week is what I call, you gotta have plenty of time for just the rent paying duties. And that's just the hard grunt work. It could be visiting the hospitals. It can be answering the mail. It can be doing reports and preparing for a council meeting. It could be counseling. It could be repairing a faucet, a leaky toilet. I mean, cutting the grass. It's just all the things that are required. But that's what your work week. And then the last thing, let me hurry. Oh goodness. The last thing is the hard work, but I want you to prepare a Sunday ministry calendar or a Sunday preaching calendar for the whole year. I'm not saying you may go back later and tweak it, but I want you to try this. Most guys never do it. It's just from week to week or short series to short series, and they're not going anywhere intentionally with their people. I want to remind you that the Holy Spirit is omniscient and all-wise. He knows what your people need all next year. He knows what they need on the 3rd Sunday of June. He is aware of who's going to be there. He knows exactly what your people need all 52 Sundays next year. And he can tell you. He can communicate that to you. And if you'll start building the bridge as you walk on it, if you'll just begin, well, I can't see June yet, but I can see January. And then when you build out January and just have a purpose for every sermon, for every Sunday, have a purpose for every Sunday. I am taking my people somewhere. And then that purpose directs your sermons and your sermon series. And you look at maybe in February is a great time to talk about relationships, not just marriage, but relationships. Family and singleness and marriage, because of Valentine. You've got Pentecost, the church liturgy, Easter, Pentecost. Some of those things can really help you give direction. But the Holy Spirit, if you do what you do on purpose, you're taking your people somewhere, you're praying, and you realize my people are lacking in this area. I need to do a series on this. We need to do a deep study, a deep dive into this particular topic or this particular subject. And here's the deal. It makes you're doing an audit of how effective you are, and you're taking your people somewhere. And once you kind of have it mapped out for the year, you'll be surprised. Like that 3rd Sunday in June, you've got it down. It's in pencil. You can always erase it. But you're going to be doing, say, a series in June. You're going to be doing a series on Sabbath, to live life at a sustainable pace. Not make your life about just nose to the grindstone and success the way the society. So you're doing a series in June. It's vacation time, and so it's just maybe a good time to do something on Sabbath living. Well, I'm telling you, in February, March, you're going to be reading, you're going to be studying, you're going to have an experience that, man, that would work good in that series coming up in June or September or 3 weeks from now. And and this pressure's not going to be on you. The nose to the grindstone, week after week, churning out yet one more message. You begin to think holistically. You begin to think of your whole year, and God can begin to speak to you about the whole year. And like fine wine or cheese that ages, man, by the time you've walked with a sermon series for 6 months, it's going to be rich. And so anyway, summary, let me sum it up. Healthy ministers produce healthy churches, and healthy churches grow. And so a way to stay healthy is to do a time audit. Audit your personal time. Get that done first. Audit your work week and audit your Sundays. If you do those three things before the end of the year, I promise you, come COVID-20, heaven forbid, we've had COVID-19. If COVID-20 comes, whatever comes next year, I promise you, you'll have a better year than if you will not do this. Let me give just a word to any church members that's watched this as well. And I know I have some that do. You've told me. Church member, church board member, I want to remind you, we don't think this way, but your pastor is your greatest asset. You must be a part of this audit too. I want you to be intentional in protecting your greatest asset, which is your pastor and your ministers on staff. Two things that I want to make sure that you audit regularly. Protect your pastor and his family. Protect their health. The health of their personal health, their emotional health, the health of their marriage, the health of their children. You see to it that you build space for them. When they take time off and somebody complains, when they're not accessible 24/7, just over the most things that others could take care of or things that could wait, you protect them. You defend your pastor. Protect your greatest asset. And then number two, pay your preacher to pray and to think and to study. We think the pastor's got to be out there knocking on doors and doing, and he does. She does. If we don't see them, they're not working. But a lot of their greatest work is going to be done behind closed doors. I'm not talking about being lazy, but thinking and praying and studying is hard work. But if you will say a part of our pay package, a part of the reason why we pay them is we want them to have time to pray more. To pray more than we pray. To study more than we study. We've got to do these other things. And they're just as important if you're doing what God's called you to do. We've got to have the candlestick maker and the baker and whatever that little saying is. And so it's not that their pastor's better than you, but in their sphere of responsibility, defend them and see it that we are paying them. And it's okay to pay them to pray, to study, to just sit in a room and think. Because our world will be better as they're creating a better future for us. So anyway, there you go. God love you all. I pray that you have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. See you around the bend. Let's keep running to win. And that requires doing things on purpose. And the only way you know that is sometimes to do an audit. So God love you. We'll see you soon, Lord willing. Bye-bye.